Hey guys, it's Oliverse. I'm here at the Disciple HQ and I thought it would be a good chance to break down my new track, All My Love with Hannah Avison, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with the very beginning of the track. We'll start from the beginning. So I started with these atmosphere loops. It's very rare when I'll write something without laying down the atmosphere first. It always feels a little bit weird making stuff in like complete silence, so I like to have like a little bit of something to work off. Even if it's just like a drone just playing one note, or it's just something I maybe's got from Splice, it just kind of lays the bed for the track, and then I can start writing chords over that. So this is what I've got for this track. So we've just got this drone sound just with an LFO just to give it like that pumping sound. Then we've also just got this little arpeggiated pluck in the background. And just generally some other bits. It just kind of fills the track out really. But this is just the intro of the track. We'll move on to the main piano sound, which is the main bit of the intro. So I'm quite known for using these M1 piano sounds, but this is how I've done it in this track. These are the chords. So in terms of processing the M1 sound, the M1 synth only plays back in mono. It's actually based off an old keyboard in the 90s, and it only had like a mono output. So to make this work with like modern day production, we need to widen it up a little bit. So that's basically what this processing is. We've got the Ozone 10 imager just to widen the sound out. And then we've also got an exciter as well, just to bring out some of the tops, because it's generally quite a dull sound. But yeah, we've got a little bit of compression just to bring the attack out. And then I always use this hard piano preset in Soothe. It just takes that like really sort of harsh top end and quite boxy mids as well away from the sound. And that's generally the starting point for that sound. And then we've just got a few EQ moves just to kind of tuck it into the track. In terms of layering it up, we've also got this bass layer, which is only playing the bass note. It just really thickens out the sound and makes it fill the full mix up, because the lower register of this piano sounds a bit messy, so it's kind of best to do that with like a more clean sound. And then once that riff repeats once over, it adds this supersol layer, which is playing the exact same notes. It's just a lot brighter sound. So yeah, just nice and easy really. We've also got these little reverse layers which just kind of fill those gaps in and just sweep up to the next chord. I've done this just by bouncing out one chord with a big reverb on and then reversing it and just doing a fade. We've also got an auto pan on there which speeds up, and then a filter opening up, so you get this kind of effect. So altogether it just fills them gaps really nicely. So yeah, just dead straightforward. Moving in further into the intro, we've just got some extra elements. So we've got this high string sample, and then this arpeggiator, which is just an Omnisphere preset. But yeah, apart from that, they're like the main elements of the intro really. We've got some odd little atmospheres just sort of floating in and out. So it's just all really subtle stuff really. I really wanted the piano to be the focus, and then everything else is just kind of lifting that up to the next level. So now that's done, we can move on to the drop. So I'm going to start with the drums for this actually, because I think the drums are quite cool just on their own. I've been really feeling making this sort of like 4/4 dubstep where the kick's on every beat, but then you've also got the snare on every 3. It just gives like a really bouncy feel, and it's really cool for the percussion as well. You can do a lot with it. So this is how the drums sound for this track. So yeah, we've got all these like cool little fills with like clap samples, and we've got like little zaps in there and stuff. Just really makes the track come to life and just gives it a lot of bounce, which is what I wanted for this track. So that's kind of like the backbone of the track, the drums. We'll move into the basses, or what's in this bass layer. So the drop's comprised of 2 main elements. There's this lead sound, and then we've got this bass sound. So yeah, this is just really simple. So the lead sound I just made in Anna 2, and all it is just a detuned saw wave with like a filtered, with an envelope filter on it. Yeah, we've got some other things on the chain here which just kind of make it fit into the track a bit. So if I turn these effects off, you'll hear that it's not really that much different. It just sounds a bit darker and drier without. So the main thing I've done here is I've used this plugin by Voxengo, MSED. This basically lets you turn up the mid channel and the side channels independently. When I was working on the mixdown for this track, the lead wasn't really cutting through enough in mono, so I've just used this as a quick fix just to bump that mid signal. And then I've just turned down the side signal just a tiny bit just to kind of tuck it back into the mix. But yeah, we've got a bit of dimension expander on that just to widen it up a bit. Transient shaper just to make it punch through a little bit more. And then we've got all these effects here, which is just kind of the reverbs and delays. This one's quite interesting because there's actually two reverbs on this. There's this one. If I just turn these back on. So we've got this one that's really subtle in the background. It's just kind of adding more of like a space to put it in rather than something noticeable. But then we've got this one, which is Pro R, but before that I've put Pitch Wheel, which is a pitch shifting plugin, and I've pitched it up 12. So the reverb that's going into this, or the sound that's going into this, it's actually an octave higher. So that's just kind of adding like an extra reverb on that's totally separate from the main sound. It just all gels together really well. And then we've just got like a little bit of delay with a bit of reverb on just so it's not so dry. And that's how it sounds within the track. So the other main sound is this serum patch, which is the main bass line. This is a really simple sound, so if I turn the effects off to start with, there's not really much going on here. I've actually made this wavetable using the wavetable editor and just drawn in like the fundamentals that I want to make the sound. So that's what I landed on. I've added a little bit of white noise, and then I don't even know if this, oh yeah, we've got this sub oscillator as well, which is just playing an octave above, and it's all going through a low pass filter. The sound doesn't come to life till we turn the distortion on. And that's where like everything starts to really get pushed together and like those extra harmonics come out. We've got a little bit of hyperdimension as well just to bring out some just some width from the sound because it was quite mono. So it's quite a cool sound really, but it's not really got much low mids, so that's why I've stacked it up with this sound. Same kind of curve on the filter, it's just a different wavetable just to fill out those low mids. And then we've also got this filtered saw wave, which is doing the same kind of thing with the volume automation. This just helps widen out the low end and just make it feel a little bit warmer. Because without this, I think it was feeling quite, it was just feeling a little bit cold and sort of mono. This just really helped to like widen out and just make it sound a lot richer overall. So we've got that bit. The next bit we've got is the B section where it starts to play this melody with the basses. So this is a really simple sound. So to start off, we've got that same patch from before, which is that wide detuned saw, which just widens up the bottom end and just warms it up. We've got this main sound here, which is literally just two saw waves. One's an octave down, the other one's an octave up, and then +7 to get that extra sort of harmonic. So yeah, it just gives that like real old school vibe. So I've actually got some stuff set up on a macro here, so when it gets to the end of each section, it plays that little rhythm. And I've actually got this set up with a macro, so whenever the macro is turned down, it enables this LFO, and I've mapped that all through like the matrix thing there, so yeah, it just gives a bit of variation every time it loops around. And the other sound is just this square wave that just plays the melody over the top. And we've just got a little bit of vibrato that comes in at the end of each few notes just to keep it interesting. But altogether that sounds like this. But yeah, just some extra little bits on the drop. We've got these hype layers, so we've got this little siren in the background. And then we've also got these like basically white noise layers. I've laid a few things up. There's a few VR samples in there. There's this, which is just a ridiculously detuned super saw, and another similar thing down here, but altogether it's not much really, but when you put it in the context of the mix, it just really like adds a lot more excitement and just widens the full thing out. So let's move on to the second drop, because that's where things start to change. Really want to do something different for the second drop of this tune, so this is where I've done like a 4/4 techno drop for this one, with like a cool like rolling bass line. So we've got the exact same lead sound from before, but we've got this rolling bass here, which I actually made in Pigments. I tried to make this in Serum, but I just couldn't get it right for some reason. And as soon as I tried to do it in Pigments, it just clicked for some reason. But the thing is with these sounds is, doing these kinds of bass lines, they're really simple sounds and you don't really need to overcomplicate them. The more layers that you add to it, the more like sort of washed out, and like the more stuff starts fighting for space and for like transients and stuff. It's best just to try use as like few oscillators as possible. So I've done this just with one saw lead, or like one saw oscillator within Pigments. And it was just a case of fine tuning the filter envelope and the envelope of the actual sound itself. And that's what's resulted in this sound. So all that's going on there is just that Pigments layer where it's just a saw wave, and we've got this Serum layer where it's just a kick attack that I've dragged into Serum. And that's just adding some extra bite to the initial sound, because it wasn't really coming through enough from Pigments itself. We've also got this plugin called Texture, which I've been using a lot. If anyone uses Ableton, this is basically like erosion, but you can drag samples in instead of just having the choice of using white noise or like the redux effect. You can actually drag samples into here, but I've only used this on the white noise setting, but you've got all these controls to control the envelope, so it's really handy for like drum sounds or like stuff like this where you just want to add a little bit of top end that's not there to start with. So it's just really subtle in the background, but it just kind of added a bit of extra hiss, because these sounds on their own, they don't have any top end to them. They're filtered quite heavily, so that just helped to fill it out. But in terms of effects and stuff, we've got this from Shaperbox, which is just the sidechain, and so it's ducking out the way of the kick. And then we've got this EQ3 plugin, which is the bit I want to talk about this, because this can be really handy for these kinds of sounds. It can also be handy for kick drums as well, if you want to change how the transient sounds. The way that EQ3 works is it's 3 EQ bands, but the way that it splits the bands off that you're affecting, it actually causes phase issues, but we can use that to our advantage, and it can create like really cool sort of changes in the sound. It's kind of what Disperser does, but obviously this only does it with 3 bands. I think Disperser does it with like a lot more. But this is like a really simplified version of it, and I think you can actually make Disperser by stacking a load of these on top of each other. But for this sound I've only used one, and we've just moved the frequency low value, because if we shift this around, it's very subtle in this sound. Some sounds it'll affect it more than others, but if we just move this around, you can hear how it kind of changes the tonality of the bass, especially like the bite of this sound. So all I've done here is I've just kind of swept around and just found a sweet spot where I felt like it fits the mix best, and it's like cutting through the best as well. So yeah, that's that there, but it can be great for these kinds of sounds, or kick drums and even snare drums, to be honest, if you put it in the right place, because it totally changes how that initial transient hits. We'll move on to the vocals really quickly. I actually done a lot of the vocal production in a different project, because this project's quite big already. Trying to run the full vocal chain and this at the same time would just be too much. So I've done the basic like sort of auto-tune, melodyne, compression, bit of EQ. I've done all of that in another project. So everything here is just to bed it into the track, because it's all well and good having a vocal sound good on its own, but once you bring it into the track, you need to make sure that it fits everything that's around it. So a lot of this stuff is just like EQ and like width stuff. So and like the reverbs and delay as well, because I didn't want to print those to audio and be stuck with them. I wanted control of that within the project. So yeah, we've got a little bit of soothe, just rolled off some of the low mids, bit more soothe. Yeah, and then we've got this Gem Dopamine plugin, which is really cool for adding top end to vocals. It can kind of add top end that's not there, and it kind of gives you that polished vocal sound. I really like using this. But yeah, we've got a little bit of width being added. I like to keep vocals generally quite central in the mix, but it's quite good to widen like just the very tops. It just kind of makes it feel like it's big. This little rack that I've got here, it's just all of the reverbs and delays. Throughout the track, I've used different reverbs and delays for different sections, because obviously the dubstep section is quite busy. There's a lot of stuff floating around, so I kind of felt like I had to match that with the vocal effects. But for the second drop, it's a lot more minimal, so I was a bit more reserved with the amount of reverbs and delays I was adding. So yeah, that's all I was doing through this with these different chains. It was just flicking them on and off at different points. But that's kind of it for the main vocal. In terms of layers and stuff, we've got the lead vocal. Hannah also recorded some doubles for this. So this just really helps widen the sound out and gives like certain lines, like certain, basically just gives certain lines emphasis over others when we turn the doubles on and off. We've also got these little sweeps that I've made to help fill these gaps. I felt like without these, the gaps were a little bit too pronounced, and it felt like it was like unpolished almost. And I think once we added these in, it started to feel like a finished vocal. So all this is just a reversed reverb throw, similar to how we done it with the pianos for the intro. And then we've got this one where I've just cut out the word love. So I've just panned that left and right really quick. And then we've just got like a filter sweep going through it. And I've just added a little bit of chorus just to kind of just make the sound a bit more sort of modulated. But that's a really cool thing. That was quite a cool thing to do with this vocal. But yeah, apart from that, it was just a pretty simple song. In terms of mastering, the only thing that's on there is K-clip, and I'm not pushing it at all, because the way that I mix is normally quite loud. When I'm producing, I'll normally have this plugin open by Noisier, Vision 4X. In my studio at home, I've got two screens, and I've normally got Vision 4X open the whole time. So while I'm producing, I'm always keeping an eye on like levels and stuff. So everything that's getting fed into the clipper, I'm doing it quite cautiously. It's not like it's the last step of the chain, it's the first thing that I'm doing. So anything that gets fed into it, I'm keeping an eye on like how hard it's being pushed into it. So I can kind of minimize any distortion, and I'm not totally like pushing it too hard to the point where it sounds awful. But yeah, a lot of people ask about mastering chains, saying like, what do you use for mastering? But genuinely, like, that's it. There might be like a little bit of EQ if I'm like referencing to other tracks, and I feel like it'd be easier just to do it on the master with an EQ just to like make it sound the same as like another track. But yeah, I don't bother with like compression or anything like that. It's always best to just get the dynamics sounding good in the mix itself, and then the clippers just kind of trimming everything off at zero. So just really easy. But yeah, that's generally it for this track. Hope you enjoyed watching it. Hope you learned a thing or two. You can go stream the track now. It's out on Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. But yeah, till the next one. Thanks very much.